this edition of Service News, we feature the new ERIC engine management system and cover a host of technical items, including a service fix for Maestro and Montego door seals, Rover 800 boot spring replacement, Rover 820 vibration at idle, and what to do with cases of light throttle surge on multi-point injected cars. Hello and welcome. The Service News team recently visited the dealer network to ask your opinion on video in general and in particular what you wanted to see in future Service News programs. The overwhelming answer was more technical items. So here we are, a program packed with up-to-date technical hints and tips. But first, let's take a look at the latest models unveiled at this year's Motor Show.
The new Metro Sport, GTA and GS models complement the revised Metro range for '89, together with new Red Hot and Jet Black limited editions. The Maestro range has been revised and there are 4 new models for '89. The 1.3 Special, the 1.3 SL, the 1.6 SL and the exciting new limited edition Maestro Turbo with colour-keyed spoilers and class-beating performance. The already successful Rover 200 range has new trim specifications and new body colours, and the Rover 800 goes from strength to strength. The body styling kits are also proving to be another winner. The Montego range has been extensively revised for '89. All carburettor Montegos, with the exception of turbo, are capable of running on unleaded fuel without a retune, and all have modified trim and dashboard layouts. The 1.6 models are now fitted with Honda-designed PG1 5-speed gearbox as standard, giving an even smoother gear change. Spearheading the '89 model year Montego range are the exciting new 2-litre turbo diesels. These cars, with their advanced direct injection engines, are quiet, powerful and incredibly economical. For example, at a steady 56 miles per hour, they return 75 miles to the gallon. To reduce the idle vibration usually associated with diesels, the engine has been mounted on its torque axis. This means that any vibration is absorbed by the mountings instead of being transmitted into the car. The Garrett T2 turbocharger gives the MDI turbo over 30% more power than the normally aspirated version, adding up to a very respectable 81 brake horsepower. Although the MDI engine is inherently quiet, careful attention was paid to sound deadening. This means cabin noise levels of the Montego turbo diesel are no higher than the petrol engine version. Apart from the turbocharger, the engine bay layout is similar to that of a Maestro van. That is, with the exception of a black fuel reservoir on the left-hand valance. This tank ensures that no aerated fuel reaches the fuel injection system when cornering, and fuel tank levels are low. There are a couple of things to remember when servicing these vehicles. First, to cope with the higher oil temperatures of the turbocharged engine, C.D.L rated engine oil must be used. And second, there's an oil change at the 1,000 mile after sales service. From then on, all main and lubrication services revert to normal.
Remember, you can find details of all the new models in Today's Cars. You'll find a copy in the showroom. Now here's Paul with our latest bulletin highlights.
The first one is a quick cure for Maestro and Montego door aperture seals. The top edge of the seals, both front and rear, can sometimes become loose on the flange and may fall away. If this is the case, apply 3M double-sided tape along the length of the flange and replace the seal. Full instructions are contained in the bulletin item 31 for Maestro and 33 for Montego. Now a service fix for Rover 800 Fastback roof creaks. A creak from the rear of the roof can sometimes be heard when driving over rough ground in these cars. This is caused by panels in the cant rail and D-post areas rubbing against each other during normal body flexing. The first thing to do is to determine which side of the roof is creaking. Then you'll have to remove quite a few items of trim and pull one side of the roof lining down to gain access to the panels. Full details are given in Rover 800 Bulletin, item 65. The creak originates from this seam, forward of the D-post. To cure it, increase the gap between the panels to about 2 millimeters. Before you replace the trim, road test the vehicle to make sure the fault's cured. If you or your customers experience a scraping sound as you turn the steering wheel on a Rover 800 without cruise control, then it's possible the horn slip ring track has become dry or pitted. Remove the steering wheel and check the slip ring for wear. If it's badly damaged, then it must be replaced. Light pitting can be cleaned out using 600 grade wet and dry paper. Lightly grease the slip ring. Only use electrical grease for this or you'll have problems. And make sure the contact arm on the steering column sits centrally and is aligned with the slip ring before finally tightening the wheel. Turn the wheel from lock to lock a few times to make sure you've cured the problem. Rover 800 Bulletin, item 44, covers the full procedure.
Now a fix for Rover 800 boot springs. On some cars, particularly early examples, the boot springs can become detached and the boot lid will not stay open. First, remove both springs and fit new C-shaped bearings to the hinge brackets with the tail facing forwards. Drill a 6mm hole in each plastic push rod, 40mm from one end. Now fit both springs into the C bearings, making sure the spacer block fits between the loop of the spring. Fit the push rods with the holes to the rear and secure them to the hinge arms with cable ties. Using a large screwdriver as a lever, fit the left-hand boot spring into the middle adjustment position. It's important to fit the left spring first, as the right one is designed to fit below it. When you've fitted both springs, open and close the boot lid at least 10 times to make sure everything stays in place. The full procedure, together with the relevant part numbers, is covered in Rover 800 Bulletin, item 47.
Rover 800 Bulletin, item 29, details a cure for idle vibration problems on 820 automatics. Of course, any engine will vibrate at idle if it's not correctly tuned, so it's most important to ensure the idle speed and CO are correct before looking elsewhere for a fault. A vibration or shake experienced at idle speed, particularly when selecting drive or reverse, can be caused if the front bumper is incorrectly aligned, the engine mounting rubbers are too hard, or if the radiator is incorrectly fitted. If you carry out all these operations and the level of vibration is still unacceptable, contact Network Services in Cowley.
And now a feature that highlights the importance of setting spark plug gaps correctly. If surge or shunt is experienced on light throttle, particularly in a multi-point injected vehicle, check the plug gaps. A gap of less than 40 thou can cause such a problem. The easiest way to check this is with a kV tester. Reading should be around 15 kV on each cylinder at 1,200 revs per minute. An overlarge gap will cause high readings, whereas narrow gaps will tend to lower the readings. Bulletin 186, item 13, covers the diagnosis procedures for this and just about every MPI engine running problem. Now here's an interesting problem. A Rover 827 that cranks but will not fire and has the PGM-FI warning light permanently lit. Well, the first thing to do is look under the seat and check if the diagnostic light on the ECU is flashing a fault code. If it's not, but the PGM-FI light is on, the most likely fault is a loss of power to the ECU. First, make sure the inertia switch hasn't tripped and that fuse number 13 is okay. Then bypass the inertia switch by bridging its terminals. If the engine now starts, the switch is faulty and should be replaced. This switch is an important safety device, so the car must not be driven with the bridge in place. If the engine won't start, the most likely cause of the fault is in one of the light green and orange wires at header joint number 1 in the harness cassette box behind the fascia above the steering column. Check for continuity between all of the light green and orange wires in the header. If there isn't, take the header apart and repair the connection. Now for a similar problem, but one that applies to all derivatives of the Rover 800, not fitted with a burglar alarm from VIN 177121. If the starter will not operate, or will only crank intermittently, then it's possible that the earth path to the starter relay is broken at the redundant alarm ECU connector. Remove the right-hand side closing trim panel behind the coin tray and check the black link wire which joins the black and white wires in the large red connector. Rover 800 Bulletin item 64 contains the full procedure.
Now a cure for Speedo cable noise on Montegos and Maestros. These later vehicles are fitted with a Nippon C.D.L instrument pack, identified by a round trip button. If there's a Speedo noise coming from one of these cars, then the cable's fouling on the right-hand face-level vent duct or the wiring harness. Now, a temporary fix, pending the introduction of a new duct, is covered in Maestro Bulletin item 13 and Montego Bulletin item 15. This involves cutting a V in the duct to provide a straighter cable run and then renewing the cable. Full instructions are given in the bulletin.
A problem of the tailgate or boot failing to lock using the central door locking is caused by the central locking plunger bouncing back to the unlock position when the lock motor de-energizes. The cure for this is quite simple. The movement of the plunger can be restricted slightly by winding a single turn of wire around the lock motor casing. Refer to Maestro Bulletin item 26 and Montego Bulletin item 28 for the full procedure. Now, leaking radiators. It has been noticed that some radiators returned under warranty have been subjected to high pressures. It's most important that when pressure testing a suspect radiator with an approved tester that you do not exceed the cap pressure. Staying with coolant leaks for a minute, Rover 800 Bulletin item 41 and this poster warn against the use of radiator sealants in 825 and 827 models. These sealants damage the thermostat and cause severe overheating. Apart from the possibility of engine damage, flushing these sealants from the system involves hours of work. So play safe and don't use radiator sealants in 825 and 827 models. There's nothing more annoying than a flat battery. Most cases of battery failure are caused by the battery being stored in a low state of charge at some time in its life. Remember, if the car is to be stored for more than 14 days, remove the negative battery terminal. If a battery becomes discharged in service for no apparent reason, recharge and carry out a load test. Then reconnect to the vehicle with a 50 milliamp range ammeter in circuit. Make sure all electrical loads, including interior lights, are off or you'll damage the meter. Current drain should not be more than 25 milliamps with the ignition key out. A full procedure is contained in bulletins released in September '88.
Some owners of Montegos and Maestros with glass panel Tudor Webasto sunroofs have complained of rattles from the sunroof blind and blend. Montego and Maestro Bulletin item 29 detail how to cure this by repositioning the Velcro strips and replacing the existing foam pads on the blind with Velcro.
Security-coded radios are being introduced for 1989 model year vehicles. All electronic tune radios, those with a digital display, will have a 4-digit security code. This booklet outlines the procedures to follow when dealing with security-coded radios. You'll also find the new style in-car entertainment booklet, useful to familiarize yourself with the features and controls of these new units. Whenever the power feed to a security-coded radio is interrupted, the set will remain dead and a C will appear on the display until the correct code is entered. It would take a thief about 2,500 hours to crack each code using random entries, so he could crack one code every 4 months. The code number of each radio is found on the vehicle consignment note, which is sent to the distributor who first receives the vehicle. The code cannot be found on any document supplied with the car. You'll need the code at PDI where the battery has been disconnected or the radio removed for storage. It is also very important that where radios are removed for storage, the original set is replaced. If not, the code number on the consignment note will not relate to the radio. If the code number is lost completely As a last resort, it can be obtained by phoning the ICE hotline on Oxford 717171 with details of the radio serial number and car VIN number. Because of the necessary security precautions, each request has to be verified before the number is supplied, so it can take quite a long while. So, when you're working on a vehicle with a security-coded radio, always make sure that the code is available before the battery is disconnected or the radio removed. Okay, that's our bulletin rundown. Now it's time for our special feature, which is all about Eric.
No doubt many of you have already heard of Eric. He's appeared on the bottom of recent bulletins and in this booklet. Eric is a name given to Austin Rover's new carburetor engine management system, electronically regulated ignition and carburation. The Eric system is fitted to all 89 model year carburetor Montegos. It replaces the separate electronic fuel control and programmed ignition systems currently used. Now, you can recognize Eric by this silver ECU. This is where the old programmed ignition unit used to be. This is the brain behind the system, and it controls both ignition and fueling. Other differences are the carburetor sticker, which is here. Now, this warns of the new service adjustments. And on 2-litre normally aspirated models, there's a new intake system. Now, the most important refinement to this system is that idle speed is now controlled constantly. When the engine's idling, the stepper motor pin is in constant contact with the throttle. Now, this ensures that the engine is always idling at the programmed speed. To achieve an instant response to changes in idle speed, ignition timing and the stepper motor are used. For example, if idle speed drops, the ignition is advanced to raise the engine speed. The stepper motor then takes over and opens the throttle disc until the idle speed reaches the speed programmed in the ECU. As this process takes place in a fraction of a second, the result is a really smooth idle. From day one, Eric will affect your job. The tuning procedure is completely different to the electronic fuel control system. If you try to use the old method on an Eric Montego, you'll really mess the system up. An Eric carburetor adjustment kit, 18G1560, contains a carburetor adjusting tool and these two connectors. A tuning leaflet detailing the manual tuning procedure is available and comes complete with all the relevant tuning data. With the new microcheck unit, tuning the Eric system is even easier. Microcheck connects into the system through the diagnostic socket, and it monitors the state of the system, scrolling the information on the LCD screen to guide you through the test sequence. The big advantage with Microcheck is that it can be reprogrammed. Whilst we're on the subject of software, an Eric pod is being developed for the Cobes system and will be available next year. So, to recap, Eric is fitted to all 89 model year carburetor Montegos. It's a new combined ignition and fueling system with total idle speed control. By far the most important thing to remember when working on this system is that the service adjustments are different, and you will not be able to tune an Eric Montego without the right equipment and information. You need a carburetor adjustment kit for manual tuning, and the Microcheck can check the system automatically. Now for a quick rundown of the latest service information plus items on your view data system.
A cure for faulty electric rear windows and electric mirrors on Rover 800, which involves light rework of the connectors in the front or rear door switch packs. There's news of a PDI check for oil leaks at the filter heads of Mini and Metro. Long-wave radio interference on Rover 827. This can be cured by fitting a suppressor on the main output terminal of the alternator. Full details are given in the view data bulletin. Also on Rover 800, a notice on camshaft locking tools. Later 820s with engine prefixes of 20HE have a modified timing cover, which means that a new locking tool, 18G1562, must be used. If a Rover 800 owner comments on exhaust fumes in the car when driving with the window or sunroof open, then it could be that the vent panel inside the boot has come adrift. There will shortly be a service fix for gear lever buzz on Rover 216s. This involves removing the gear selector remote rod and peening over the rivets in its universal joint. If the cable clutch on a Metro bites too close to the floor, this can be cured by adding washers to the pedal end of the cable. The full operation will be covered in the bulletin. A hesitation or general lack of power when pulling away or accelerating in an 820E can be caused by the ECU pressure sensing hose collapsing. Early cars have a rubber hose from the inlet manifold to the vapor trap. Replace the rubber hose with one made from hard plastic. Finally, Montego rear wheel arches are now protected with an anti-chip primer. This always results in an orange peel finish to the top coat in this area. Now, Technician of the Year. In all, 1,200 technicians were asked to complete a written test. Examiners also took into account the entrance service training achievements to select 5 regional winners. At the Product Training College in Cowley, the regional winners were subjected to a grueling day of written, verbal and practical tests. The examiners had great difficulty choosing a winner. All of the contestants did extremely well. Even a misfiring Metro, which turned out to be a tight tappet, didn't fool them. The eventual winner, Charles Bidgood from Mantle's Garages of Biggleswade, was presented with a plaque and tankard by UK Service Director Roy Davis. Charles joined the correspondence course winners on a trip to lie in the sun in Portugal. So once again, well done to Charles and all who took part.
And finally, here's a quick tip from a young technician in Oxford. You must know how difficult it is trying to determine which pulley or component is squealing when everything's rotating at once. Well, Jeremy Chuff-Sang from Hartwell's of Cowley has come up with an idea that's both quick and simple. Using one of these, an emergency fan belt, you can drive each of the components separately until you isolate the faulty component, altogether quicker than substituting alternators and water pumps.
Well, that about wraps up our new technical edition of Service News. I hope you've enjoyed it. See you next time round.